So, I just took a nap after dinner with my husband. I'm pretty sure I can say that's never happened in our whole marriage. Man, I passed out. It was great. But I've been meaning to get around to doing chapter 20 for Becoming the Woman of His Dreams because I haven't yet, and it's been days since I read it. I just haven't had a chance to sit and do a video where I'm not folding laundry or in the kitchen. Sorry, you guys. This chapter was about guarding our hearts, and I thought it was really good to think about, and something that I think a lot of women would justify in a heartbeat, no, but it's really wise to think on these things and examine our hearts and guard our hearts. So the first thing I wrote was, quit if you need to, go elsewhere, referring to work. How she says, if you start to notice that at work you are liking another man's attention or entertaining any thoughts that could lead to, it's already sin, but entertaining any thoughts that could lead to further sin, that if you need to leave, get out of there. Every sin begins with a thought. And I totally agree with that. You can either choose to let that thought continue and entertain it and add to it and elaborate on it and let it go run its course, or you can choose to stop it and replace it with the right thinking. And then I just wrote, women long to be beautiful. We desire to be thought of as lovely, and if we're lacking that at home, if someone else were to pay us that attention, it could be very dangerous. And in some cases, there's women that have it at home and still they want more, So guarding your heart and not falling into adultery by not being wise. Then the next thing I wrote was, I guess, referring to Charlotte's Web. And I underlined that could never happen to me. I remember a time in my marriage when I used to think that I could never get divorced. Of course not. We'll never get divorced. And I believe that now too. I'll never get divorced, but not for the same reasons I used to believe it. Now I believe it because I know that I am fighting for my marriage every single day, and my husband loves the Lord, I love the Lord, and we both have the same goal of honoring, obeying the Lord, and keeping unity, peace, and reconciliation at the center of our marriage. We choose to forgive each other every day. We choose to love each other every day. And so that's why I know we'll never get divorced. Not because of before. Before I used to think it just wouldn't happen. But I didn't realize in my ignorance and immaturity that anything can happen to anybody. If you don't fight sin and just let sin run its course, it'll destroy everything in its path. And same goes for divorce. If you don't fight sin, it will destroy everything in its path. So of course I can get divorced. If I started to, for lack of a better example, let's just go with bitterness. Bitterness started in my mind, and I didn't fight it. I just let it go and go and go and go. Eventually the way I act and treat my husband is going to change. Eventually the things I do are going to change. The things I don't do are going to change. I'm going to start doing things that I never did before. And before you know it, things will be very rocky and hard. And if I still don't fight it and still don't fight it and still don't fight it and just let it go and go and go and go, that could easily lead to divorce. Some things sooner than others, for some people sooner than others. But most definitely, if you don't fight against sin, it'll destroy everything in its path. So now I'm not naive enough to think that I would never get divorced. Sure I would. Don't stop fighting. Don't stop mortifying sin. Don't stop fighting for your marriage. Don't stop forgiving. Don't stop loving. Don't stop showing grace. So it's dangerous to think I would never, because if that's the case, then we're blind to the power of sin, and we're probably not fighting it very well. And then I wrote, Satan wants to destroy you. I tell this to my children. I heard another mom talk about this at church years ago, and I remember it from before I had kids. I was like, I'm going to tell it to my kids. Satan is like a prowling lion that wants to destroy you. If you let him in, he will. And so we have to be constantly on guard, constantly fighting sin, and not being foolish enough to justify sin, just doing a little bit, just to, it's harmless, just this little thing, this little secret part of my life that God knows about. Something else, side note about Charlotte's story, the fact that she was not repentant at all until she finally went to a good church and heard good teaching and realized her identity in Christ and got counsel and repented and her whole life changed, makes me think that everything leading up to that new church and starting to hear the word rightly preached and starting to realize, or God helping her see her identity in him and seeking counsel and actually repenting and turning away from her sin, I think she was just going through the motions of what a Christian is, right? She was reading her Bible, she was praying, she was at church, she was doing all the right outward things, but I don't really think she was a believer, because to be in a sexual affair for 7.5 years, I mean, maybe she was. Nobody knows her heart except the Lord, but the Lord tells us to judge by people's fruit, and that definitely doesn't show or point at all to living for Jesus. So I think she must have just been going through the motions, of Christianity, and then truly met the Lord and repented and believed and truly turned her life away, turned away from that sin. So, what did I write here? So the list of the beware things, that list, if you have toyed with the idea of having an affair emotionally or physically, call a friend and tell her. That might be humiliating and really, really hard, but hey, it'll stop you dead in your tracks if somebody knows about the sin that you're trying to keep secret. And it really, really is incredible how when you when you confess, it really loosens Satan's grip. You suddenly have this power to I'm not going to do this. I'm going to overcome this, So tell a friend, most definitely. If you feel attracted to another man, avoid contact with him. Do not have a male best friend. So many people want to justify like this. He's just a friend. I've known him for years. Do not have a male best friend. Hello. Let's not be foolish enough to believe that garbage, okay? Let's be wise. Do not tell your marriage problems to a male friend. Don't talk about your marriage negatively to anyone at all. Don't talk to any man about your marriage unless it's praising it when necessary. How weird to even be talking about your marriage to a guy. Do not confide in a male friend. Do not believe the lie that life could be better with another man. Do not go off alone with another man. Of course not. Stay connected to God through Bible study and prayer. Secrets are Satan's best tool. Don't keep secrets. Once you bring something out into the open by confessing it to another person, it loses his power over you, definitely. Guard your heart. Examine your heart. Is there anything in your life that needs to change today that you are sinning in? A secret that you have, that you justify, that you always say it's harmless and you think it's harmless, that could eventually ruin your marriage or even just anything in your life? Is there any part of your life that is not living in obedience to the Lord? If so, bugs are back, springtime. If so, confess it to a friend, confess it to the Lord, and make the decision by God's grace and by God's help to turn away from it today. Today.